After seeing his fiancée eliminated in a brutal attack, a man diagnosed with recent memory loss goes after the culprit in search of revenge. Today we're going to recap the story of the 2008 movie Ghajini. At a medical university, Sunita and her colleagues learn about the brain, which is considered the main organ of the human being because it controls all the other parts of the body. While researching cases of patients who have suffered brain damage, the young woman comes across the file of Sanjay Singhania, who has been diagnosed with recent memory loss. Curious to study this patient's disorder, Sunita asks her teacher for permission to interview him. However, he forbids her to do so because Sanjay's case is under investigation by the police. The young woman says she won't investigate the case, but asks the professor to share the information he has already gathered about the patient. The man then says that Sanjay was hit on the head with an iron bar and, after the attack, he lost his memory. Now, the businessman remembers only the things that have happened in the last 15 minutes and, after that, forgets everything again. Sanjay has few memories of the day he was attacked, but no one knows for sure how much he remembers. Since then, the patient has only been able to carry out tasks instructed to him by someone or through his own notes. Although his file doesn't say who attacked him, Sanjay has some clues and is dedicating his life to taking revenge on the culprit. To do this, he needs to get rid of some obstacles, so he uses his great strength and incredible fighting skills to eliminate all those who try to stand in his way. After eliminating one of his enemies, Sanjay takes a photo to remind himself to cross him off his list and takes his cell phone to get the phone number of another guy called Ghajini, who is his main target. Hours later, the police arrived at the scene and investigated the victim's body in an attempt to identify a possible suspect. Inspector Arjin is in charge of the case and he's working hard to find clues that will lead him to the criminal. On Ghajini's orders, the inspector says he will find the culprit in the next 48 hours. As this is already the second henchman from his team to be eliminated in less than a week, Ghajini knows he'll be next. So the man needs to find out who is responsible for those eliminations in order to get rid of him. Through photos and notes, Sanjay manages to return to his address with the help of a taxi driver and is confused when he enters his own apartment, as if it were the first time he had been there. Upon entering the room, the businessman finds all the evidence and information he has collected over the last 2 years, which he needs to complete his revenge. The next morning, when he wakes up, Sanjay is in a state of shock because he doesn't understand what is happening. So the man investigates the place looking for other people and, when he discovers that he is alone in the house, he goes to the bathroom. As he approaches the mirror, Sanjay sees a note telling him to remove his shirt and discovers that there are several tattoos all over his body. Through them, he has access to the key information that will help him find the men who eliminated Kalpana. After reading the name of his beloved, Sanjay recovers some fragments of his memory and goes to check the notes and photos he has gathered so far. He then goes for his morning workout and exercises his body to make it even stronger. Meanwhile, the man is stunned several times by the sad memories of his past, because every time he loses his memory it's as if he's reliving all the trauma he suffered. That morning, Arjin follows the clues he has collected from the crime scene and discovers that, every day at 10 o'clock, his main suspect is at a bus stop in the city. So, the inspector asks the taxi driver for help in identifying him and is on the lookout until Sanjay shows up. Arjin quickly runs after the bus, but Sanjay realizes that he is being chased and manages to escape in time. That morning, the man goes to the hospital to monitor his condition and ends up being seen by Sunita. The young woman introduces herself as a final-year medical student and invites him for coffee. At that moment, the alarm clock rings, indicating that 15 minutes have passed, and Sanjay explains that the alarm is to remind him to photograph important things and people so that he can remember them later. Sunita then asks him to photograph her and identify her as his friend so that they can keep in touch later. Sanjay then takes 2 photos and gives one to the young woman, who says she will show it to him the next time they meet. After the doctor's appointment, the man returns to his house and is surprised by the sudden arrival of Arjin, who uses a wooden club to attack him. Soon after, the inspector ties the suspect to a chair and rips off his shirt to check his tattoos. While investigating the scene, he finds a diary dated 3 years ago and discovers that the criminal was an extremely successful businessman at the time. Sanjay Singhania is the owner of India's largest cell phone company, AirVoice. On the other side of Mumbai lives Kalpana, who works in a film studio as an extra in advertising videos. But her real dream is to become a world-renowned model. While planning the next advertising campaigns to be carried out to publicize AirVoice, Sanjay orders his agents to put a sign on the roof of one of the houses in the street. Coincidentally, the house chosen belongs to Kalpana, so some AirVoice agents go to the studio where the young woman works to ask her permission to put up the sign. When they get there, they are greeted by Satvir, the owner, who guides the visitors to the dressing room. At that moment, All the employees gather at the door to eavesdrop and can only hear part of the conversation. When he realizes that Kalpana is refusing a proposal made in the name of Sanjay Singhania, Satvir comes to the conclusion that the young woman was being asked for a date. Then, as soon as the men leave, he tries to convince her to accept the request, because the studio would grow enormously when people knew that the girlfriend of the owner of Air Voice was the main star of all the commercials. Excited by the opportunity to become a famous model, Kalpana decides to stick to the story invented by her boss. At his request, she calls the company and informs them that she accepts Sanjay's proposal. From that day on, Kalpana was given the lead role in all the commercials and, little by little, her fame began to grow. Shortly afterwards, the story that Sanjay is dating a model is published in all the gossip magazines and the businessman decides to unmask his supposed girlfriend in person. On the way to the studio, the man is in his car when he sees a beautiful young woman helping disabled children cross a wooden bridge and is charmed by her kindness and gentleness. Minutes later, he arrives at the studio and is amazed to discover that Kalpana is the young woman he had seen on the way. Believing that this guy is just another reporter, Kalpana once again tells the made-up story of how she and Sanjay met. After watching the whole act, the man is unresponsive and Kalpana assumes that he is there to take part in the filming of the next commercial. Without the courage to unmask the woman, Sanjay says he went there to get the job and leaves his phone number with the actress. When Kalpana asks what his name is, the businessman tells her that his name is Sachin and leaves feeling completely in love with the woman. A few days later, he receives the long-awaited phone call and arranges to meet her at a location near the film set. As they walk down the street together, Kalpana spots a visually impaired man and helps him walk to the bus stop, which makes Sanjay more and more enchanted by the young woman. As time goes by, the couple become closer and closer and become great friends. Every time they meet, the businessman is even more impressed by Kalpana's kindness and develops a great love for her. The whole time they spend together, the actress doesn't even suspect that the guy is the real owner of Air Voice and believes he's just an ordinary man trying to make a living as an actor. One day, Kalpana learns that her boss is planning to throw a big party on New Year's Eve and has already sent out invitations to some big celebrities. Then he breaks the news that Sanjay has been announced as the guest of honor and asks the young woman to take her boyfriend with her to the party. Upon hearing this, Kalpana despairs, as she realizes that she is about to be unmasked. However, she calms down when Satvir tells her that the guests are dying to meet Sanjay, since no one has ever seen him in public. At this point, Kalpana thinks of a plan to get away with it once again and asks a friend to help her pretend to be her boyfriend during the party. Suddenly, Sanjay rings the doorbell and the young woman says that this is the moment for Sampit to practice his acting, to find out if he is being convincing. However, as soon as he sees the man, the businessman starts laughing and says that he could never be Sanjay Singhania. So Kalpana decides to tell her friend the truth and reveals that she lied about dating the owner of Air Voice in order to gain more prestige in the company where she works. In an attempt to help her, Sanjay offers to train Sampit so that he can act more convincingly, but instead Kalpana manages to convince him to pretend to be her boyfriend during the party. The businessman arrives on the scene in his imported car and even the young woman is impressed when she realizes that everyone has identified him as Sanjay Singhania, without him having to say a single word. During dinner, the representative of an orphanage approaches the businessman to ask for a contribution for the NGO where she works and Kalpana immediately tries to find excuses to get Sanjay out of the situation. However, the man takes out his checkbook and makes a large donation to the NGO. Seeing this, the actress feels relieved and believes that her friend has given Vijayanti a bad check. After the celebration, they return home by bus and Kalpana starts laughing when she realizes that her plan has worked. She can hardly believe that Sanjay managed to fool everyone with his act. Seeing the woman smiling, the businessman can't contain his feelings and, after confessing his love for her, asks Kalpana to marry him. At this point, the woman is surprised and asks for some time to think about her answer. Before getting off the bus, she says that she will answer him the next day. While on his way, Sanjay plans what to do and comes to the conclusion that if Kalpana agrees to be his fiancée, he will reveal his true identity to her. Otherwise, the businessman intends to disappear from her life without ever letting the woman know who he really is. This is the end of his diary from 2005 and, to find out the rest of the story, the inspector needs to find the notes from the following year. But before Arjin can read the rest of the story, Sanjay breaks free and attacks him. During the fight, the inspector receives numerous blows to the head and picks up a wooden club to attack his opponent. However, his blows have no effect and once again he becomes an easy target. Just as Arjin was about to be eliminated with a fire extinguisher, Sanjay hears the doorbell and goes to answer the door. He then receives a visit from his manager and his doctor, who has gone there to assess his state of health. At this point, Pankaj tries to convince his boss to return to his mansion, where he will have access to the best nurses and private drivers. However, Sanjay refuses to leave the apartment and says he's doing just fine on his own. That evening, the man goes to the medical school's culture festival because he knows that Ghajini will be there. Sanjay is sitting in one of the auditorium seats when the presenter announces the arrival of his greatest enemy. At that moment, he gets up and takes a photo of Ghajini to keep in his files. During a musical performance by Sunita and her gang, he goes to the parking lot and calls Ghajini. However, the old man asks one of his henchmen to answer the call and, when the man appears underground, Sanjay attacks him. As more than 15 minutes have passed, the businessman has already forgotten Ghajini's face, so he is convinced that this guy is his target. So Sanjay breaks his neck mercilessly and then takes the photo he took a few minutes ago to verify his identity. When he realizes that he has eliminated the wrong man, he despairs, but soon has to flee because the real Ghajini and his henchmen arrive on the scene and start shooting. Seeing yet another member of his group eliminated, the man realizes that he is in danger and asks for a list of all the names of his enemies in order to find out which of them is planning to eliminate him. The next morning, Sunita goes to visit Sanjay and decides to enter his apartment when she discovers that the door is open. As she walks through the dark place, the young woman finds all the notes and photos he has taken. She then discovers that the patient is a criminal who intends to eliminate Ghajini. Opening one of the cupboards, the student finds the inspector tied up and helps him free himself. After drinking some water, Arjin advises Sunita to leave, because a very dangerous man lives in that apartment. Just then, Sanjay appears and Arjin becomes desperate. However, when he realizes that the criminal doesn't remember who he is, the inspector decides to flee and begins to be chased. Desperate, Arjin runs through the streets oblivious to the vehicles and ends up being hit by a bus. Immediately, dozens of people gather around his body and, when she realizes that the man has perished, Sunita decides to flee. Knowing that Sanjay will soon lose his memory, the young woman manages to throw him off the scent and induces the patient to start a fight inside the mall so that she can escape. Meanwhile, Ghajini eliminates his enemies, one by one, in the hope of silencing the man who plans to eliminate him. However, even after exhausting his list, the old man remains convinced that his real adversary is still alive. That day, he receives a visit from Sunita and the young woman reveals that she is there to warn him about a criminal who wants to eliminate him. The student planned to report the case to the police, but if she did she would be expelled from college for going to a patient's house without authorization. So she decides to reveal Sanjay's identity to Ghajini and advises him to be very careful. When Sunita leaves, Ghajini discovers Sanjay's diagnosis and sends some of his henchmen to eliminate him. That night, they set up an ambush to eliminate the businessman when he arrives at his apartment. But what Ghajini doesn't know is that, at that very moment, Sanjay is in his house ready to eliminate him. While reading in her dorm room, Sunita finds a photo that was taken by Sanjay and remembers that the patient has a photo identical to that one. Afraid of getting into trouble with the police if she is identified as a friend of the criminal, the young woman decides to call Ghajini to ask him to take the photo back if he gets the chance. What Sunita doesn't realize is that Sanjay is on the other end of the line and discovers that she is an informer for his enemy. So the student automatically becomes his target and, in the middle of the night, her accommodation is invaded by the man, who has gone there with the aim of eliminating her. Terrified, Sunita runs out of her room and turns off the lights in the building, causing Sanjay to get stuck in the elevator. Meanwhile, she starts screaming for help and all the students come out of their rooms to help her. When the police arrive on the scene, the elevator is surrounded and Sanjay is taken to the police station. Even after the criminal is captured, Sunita can't sleep and remembers the notebooks she found in the patient's house. At that moment, she decides to read the notes and discovers everything that happened to Sanjay in 2005. Then she and her friends start reading the diary from 2006 and discover that Kalpana has accepted the marriage proposal. However, the woman had set herself the goal of getting married only after she had become rich, because ever since she was a child, her main objective has been to achieve financial independence. So Sanjay decides to wait until she has achieved her dream before revealing his true identity. A few days later, the young woman buys the first car for her future cab company. Since she's started an engagement, Kalpana is even more eager to make her dream come true, because only when it does will she be able to get married. In order to make things more comfortable for his beloved, Sanjay asks his advisor to give her the keys to a brand new apartment, without his fiancée suspecting that he was the one who gave it to her. Pankaj then invents a draw to say that the woman has been chosen to win an apartment on behalf of Air Voice. Before moving in, Kalpana invites her future husband to visit the house where they will both soon live and they record, on a fresh cement block, the first step they take together in their home. After the celebration, Sanjay informs her that he has to travel to his hometown because his mother is very ill, and promises that he will be back in 10 days. That night, before leaving, he receives a call from Kalpana and the woman says she needs to speak to him personally. When they meet, the woman hands her fiancé a large sum of money and reveals that she sold her car to help Sanjay pay for his mother's treatment. After witnessing this beautiful attitude, the man is moved and has confirmation that he must walk Kalpana down the aisle. These are the last notes Sanjay made in his diary, so Sunita decides to investigate to find out what happened after his trip. Meanwhile, the businessman's advisors manage to free him from prison and take him back home. That same night, Ghajini goes after his enemy and, after sedating him, erases all the tattoos from his body. The man knows that Sanjay is an influential man and his elimination could lead to big problems. So Ghajini decides to delete all the photos and notes about him so that when he wakes up, the businessman won't have any resources to remember his revenge plan. After a few days of investigation, Sunita finds an old newspaper article linking Kalpana to a shelter for orphaned girls. Once there, the young woman interviews Sonal and the girl tells her that while Sanjay was visiting his mother, Kalpana had to travel to the neighboring town to make a recording. When she got on the train, the woman found Sonal hiding under a seat and discovered that the girl had been captured from her village along with several other girls. At one of the stations, Sonal managed to escape and hid in that carriage in an attempt to get away from the men who had captured her. Upon hearing this, Kalpana hides in the bathroom with the girl and, when the criminals go to take her back, the woman gives them her jewelry in order to make them abandon the girl. Minutes later, the train arrives at the last station and the two discover that the men have been hiding throughout the journey, waiting to kidnap them. Luckily, in the next carriage were dozens of army officers, who attacked the criminals and then helped free the other girls who had been captured from their villages. After taking the girls to an orphanage, Kalpana receives a call from Vijayanti, the director of the shelter. Just then, the woman informs her that those girls were bought by a guy called Ghajini and he was furious that Kalpana had interfered in his business. So the man sent some of his henchmen to eliminate her. After hearing this, Kalpana realizes that someone is trying to break into her apartment and hides in the pantry. While the men search his house, Sanjay rings the doorbell and everyone falls silent. After a while, he realizes that his fiancée isn't home and leaves. However, when he gets to his car, he calls Kalpana and the invaders hear the phone ring. When he discovers that his beloved's apartment has been broken into, he goes to find her immediately and, when he does, the woman is already injured. Then Ghajini hits Sanjay on the head with a metal bar and the last thing he sees before losing consciousness is Kalpana being eliminated. When she discovers her patient's real reason for wanting revenge, Sunita visits him in hospital and helps him remember everything that happened. Minutes later, the student takes Sanjay to the place where Ghajini is and he eliminates all the security guards who try to stop him getting close to his target. Alone and empty-handed, the businessman manages to defeat several men armed with iron bars and breaks into his enemy's hideout. On seeing him, Ghajini attacks him, but is unable to defeat Sanjay and ends up being seriously injured by him. His only option is to flee, but he is chased throughout the conglomeration of old houses. On the way, some men appear and try to hold the businessman back, but none of them are able to make him give up going after his target. During the chase, the 15 minutes run out and Sanjay loses his memory, as usual. Only this time, he no longer has his photos and notes to guide him, so he's left wandering aimlessly. When he realizes what has happened, Ghajini takes the opportunity to throw off his opponent and attacks him while he is distracted. At that moment Sunita appears and runs to help her patient, but Ghajini strikes her in the face and the woman falls to the ground. While celebrating his victory, the man prepares to eliminate the young woman. However, when he sees that Sunita is about to be eliminated in the same way as his fiancée, Sanjay gathers his strength and manages to get up. After throwing a piece of metal at his enemy, he walks towards him and, after a few punches, manages to knock him down. He then strikes Ghajini on the head, causing him to suffer the same fate as Kalpana. A few months after completing his revenge, Sanjay and Sunita meet again in the orphan house he built in honor of his fiancée. His memory recovery treatment is progressing and the businessman can now remember his past in more detail. Sanjay is celebrating the birthday of one of the children at the orphanage when Sunita hands him a present. Upon opening it, the man finds the concrete block containing the footprints left by him and his beloved. While looking at that painting, Sanjay's mind is invaded by beautiful memories and he is at peace when he feels Kalpana's presence by his side. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you like the video, like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.